All right, Batman, Hush.
Batman, Hush.
So this story, Adrian, this is, I've said this before on Only Comics, this is one of my favorite Batman storylines ever.
Uh-huh.
This, I would say, if I met someone who never read a Batman comic, who didn't know who Batman was, and said, give me a story that embodies Batman and give me a story that will allow me to know why you like Batman so much, I'd give them this one.
Right.
Because it has everything.
Yep.
I mean, we're going to do our deep dive, but it has the Bat families in it.
Mm-hmm.
It has, a plethora of Batman villains in this.
Mm-hmm.
It has mystery.
Mm-hmm.
It has somewhat of a detective story. Batman's, it has a love story in it.
Yep.
It has
superhero collaboration.
Yep, Superman's in it.
Yep.
And I love Batman stories that are narrated by Batman. I know most of them are, but there are some that are not. I love Batman's, but I love the narration in this where you get into his psyche. Mm-hmm. He's telling you everything about what he thinks, feels.
Right. You got a love story and a breakup.
Yep.
I mean, you every emotion that you have about real people and Batman will get tapped into in this movie.
Absolutely. So I think this is the perfect. If you've never read Batman and you go, I want to know what Batman's all about. I know there's a lot of backstory, but read this.
Right.
It's 10 issues. And I'm also, I'm a fan of when they do something bold. You said that in the show, right? Yep. Think about at the time, this is 2002, a story this big. I mean, Jeff Loeb writes it. Jeff Loeb wrote The Long Halloween and Dark Victory. Jim Lee, one of my favorite artists of all time, draws this thing.
Love the artwork in it.
Oh, my God. Dude, the artwork is phenomenal.
Yep.
But they did this on the mainline Batman comics. I mean, this was issues 608 through 619 of just Batman.
Right.
A lot of times when they do stuff like this, they do an offshoot. The Elseworlds. Let's do a little story like the Batman 3 Jokers that came out a few years ago. It's just an offshoot. Right. It is a good book, but so they did this main story, main line. Now I didn't read this when it originally came out. First time I read this was probably less than 10 years ago. I read it before the movie. There is a movie you mentioned, right? So that's the DC animated universe.
Yep.
And it follows the Batman continuity. The Batman and Son, Batman vs. Robin, and I think this is the last one, which I enjoyed that. You saw that first, right?
I did see that first. And then I read the comic, and it's different.
Yes.
There's some different characters at play, but we'll go into that.
Oh, yeah, we're going to get into the differences
They were both entertaining.
Yep.
Definitely like the comic book version best because of the detail and definitely the artwork.
Yep.
But I like the movie ending better.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Because if my only nitpick about this is the ending. I feel like it's a little messy. It's a little sloppy, and it's a little rushed.
Right.
And that's literally, last week we did a Death in the Family. I probably had 4 or 5 downs, and in this one, that's probably my only down.
Right. And also, considering what happened, all the stuff that happened, the ending was kind of muted.
Yeah.
In the book.
Yep.
In the book. And in the movie, it was extraordinary.
Right.
So it's a completely different ending, but it was still good.
Yep. So, what we didn't do last week, Adrian, was give a Death in the Family a score. We completely just did our whole deep dive and didn't give it a number.
Okay.
Looking back, I'd give it an 8.2.
I'd go with that.
Okay.
I was going to say an 8, but 8? I can do a little, decimal bump.
Because it was phenomenal. I had my issues with it. It wasn't perfect. This one, I'd give Hush, dude, I'd give it a 9.3.
I can go with a 9.
9, okay.
Yep. It was definitely up there. Now, and that's because I don't like the differences.
Yeah.
Between the book and the TV show because I saw them both.
Yeah.
And I'm cherry picking.
Okay.
So I like something from here and I like something from here. I like the book mostly.
Yeah.
But I definitely like the ending in the movie best.
Gotcha. All right. So 9. I mean, that's probably the highest rating we've given anything on this show so far.
I would say the Hush is better than Black Adam.
Wow. First, Look at that, guys.
Yes,
so,
sir.
ladies and gentlemen, you know Adrian's not just messing with you. He finally admitted that there is one piece of art out there that's better than Black Adam.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep. Which naturally makes it better than The Flash and everything else.
Oh,
So this story, again, ran from October 02 to September of 03. I mean, that's cool, too. This thing ran, a year.
And that's the thing that I loved about picking up this piece of artwork was that, and not just because it's a comic art, but it's actually Jim Lee's art is a piece of it's true art.
Yep.
That is still relevant. It seems new. It seems fresh. You can put this thing in almost any timeline. It's 20 years old, 21 years old.
Mm-hmm.
It's still relevant. Beautiful to look at. The story's engaging. It involves so much, even today. And that's one of the things that when you sit back after you close the book and you sit back and that kind of creeps into your mind, like, wow, this was done 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. This is amazing.
You know what? The graphic novel doesn't have. I'll pull something up for you in a sec. There's in the original run, their individual issues. You read the graphic novel one, right? Mm-hmm. And there's this little blurb in the beginning of each issue, and I'll find it here in a second. So bear with me as I pull that up. But to your point about the artwork, dude, there's times in this book where I just literally get lost in the art.
Right.
I find myself. All right, check this out. I just pulled up a random. So these are like the splash pages,
right?
The regular ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it has this little blurb that is written at the beginning of every story. It says, I made a promise on the grave of my parents to rid this city of the evil that took their lives. By day, I am Bruce Wayne, billionaire, philanthropist. At night, criminals, a cowardly and superstitious lot call me Batman.
Right.
It's like, I just love that because that's just Batman like that.
And that's cool, but he doesn't really rid Gotham of these criminals. He just kind of tucks them away for a little while. They come back evil, stronger, richer, doing more damage, blah, 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 blah. So I hear what you're saying.
You don't like it as much as
I do. But I'm just kind of done with the
I got you. Well, we talk about the no-kill rule, which also kind of comes up in this little bit, right? But anyway, let's dive right in, dude. So the story starts with Batman rescuing a boy, right? A little boy's caught up in the sewer somewhere. Yep. It starts, we don't even see Batman yet. He's dropping the acid on the lock, right? And kind of what, I know it's not the detective. He found the guy already, but I like those Batman stories where it's him alone, dark, trying to figure something out, saving one small. Like I love the groundedness how this starts, and then it starts there, and next thing you know, there's a big Killer Croc fight, which talking about the artwork looked phenomenal, right? And there was a panel. I don't know if you picked up on this, but there was a panel when they were fighting, and we learned that there's a briefcase there, right, full of money, and we see a silhouette of Catwoman in the back. Mm-hmm. Did you see that?
I did not see that.
So, I saw this probably for the first time like maybe a year ago because I read this book like once a year.
Yep.
But so we see that happen. They're fighting, and next thing you know, the money's missing, right? Batman, he wraps Killer Croc up in this big old in his batarang with the wire or whatnot, and then he goes after Catwoman, which again the artwork there, dude, when they're jumping over the buildings, it's just phenomenal.
It's crazy. Yep. It's crazy.
Like they get you right from the beginning, right? Yep. And then we see Batman do something that he's done a million times, right? They're leaping from massive leap from two buildings. Catwoman's on the other side, and he's got his his little Gatling gun, his I don't know what the hell he calls it, but his rope or whatnot, and gets shot out, right in the midair.
Right.
Batman comes crashing down. He grabs onto the gargoyle, breaks his shoulder, lands on the car. Like he's done. He's messed up.
Yep.
Right in Crime Alley. And then, of all people, there's a distress call because in this point in Batman's career, Oracle is there. This takes place. What I like about it too, Adrian, is it takes place within year one continuity.
Okay.
So you have the year one comic. You have Dark Knight. Long Halloween, Dark Victory, which we're gonna do our review in a few weeks for that one.
Yep.
so it takes place in that continuity. The Killing Joke, Death in the Family, all that stuff has happened. And Jeff Loeb was the writer. So I feel like Jeff Loeb understands Batman better than a lot of writers.
I agree.
You know? So all that stuff has happened. And anyways, Batman's on the ground. The distress call comes in. Huntress comes up, or shows up, saves him. We see a cool little fight with her.
Right.
That's Jim Lee is great at being able to draw fights. Because a lot of times, you see these comics that people are fighting, and you look at them, you don't know what the hell's happening. Because it's comics. There's nothing's moving. It's not animation. But Jim really knows how to illustrate the fight to show you what's going on.
Right. Like when Catwoman is jumping around, you can see where she starts, her silhouette, her trajectory, that whole thing. I find that phenomenal.
Attention to detail.
The attention to detail. And that's the artwork style that I grew up with.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so critical of artwork styles today. And it's like I just can't, even though the show might be good, it's some shows or comics I can't even digest because the artwork is just off. And the way he did this illustration, phenomenal. Loved all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he said attention to detail. I mean, there's so much detail in Jim Lee's art.
Right.
I mean, and that doesn't mean, just because they're detailed don't mean it's better. It's the way he does it. Because, you could look at Tim Sale's stuff, The Long Halloween.
Yep.
There's not as much detail. But the way he uses colors and darkness and negative space is amazing in his own right. But it was cool to have a Jeff Loeb story with someone other than, I love Tim Sale's work, but it was really nice to see. I wish these two did more together.
Right.
You talking about that style. You're a big John Byrne fan, right?
Yep.
And that was early. He did a lot of early X-Men stuff, and so did Jim Lee. And I would say the way they drew X-Men, it was similar.
John Byrne also did Superman. A couple other characters too.
Yeah, and I'm partial to the Jim Lee X-Men run. Just the way I love the way he draws these stronger characters. He makes Batman look almost like a Hulk. I mean, Batman is a huge guy in Jim Lee's art. So, anyways, Batman gets saved by the Huntress, and Batmobile kind of shows up by itself, takes him on, and he's pretty. I mean, this story starts with Batman being pretty banged up, bad spot, and through all this, he calls out for an old friend of his, Thomas Elliot, who we've never heard of prior to, right? And this was part of that big change. You're talking about the ending, which we'll get to. Thomas Elliot's introduced. He pretty much saves Batman. What did you think of, before we get too far into what happened, what did you think of the Thomas Elliot character in the beginning?
So let me go back a little bit before I get to Elliot. So this is where, I'm watching a movie and I'm reading the magazine, the illustration at the same time. So
at the exact same time.
Exact same time.
That's interesting.
Now I had seen Hush prior to, so I didn't really have to pay attention to the movie as much. But I'm just compare and contrast. But I'm watching a movie and I'm reading the magazine, reading a comic at the same time. So the differences were that the whole kidnapping thing was similar.
Yep.
Again, much more detail in the comics, obviously.
Right.
But the antagonist wasn't Killer Croc. But by the way, the art style and the artwork and talk about detail of how he did Killer Croc was crazy.
Yes.
That was crazy. So in the comic it's Killer Croc, but in the movie it's Bane.
That's right.
Bane was he had some new serum and he was super hyped up, and it was a whole different kind of storyline. So the antagonist wasn't Croc, it was Bane. Also, once after he got shot out, from the swinging.
Yep.
And again, detail, even the bullet cutting through the bat line.
Yep.
Was just how he just embodied that. That was cool. So in the comic it was Huntress, in the movie it was Batgirl.
Right.
So another difference. Oracle didn't send the Batcar, right? Batgirl called in Alfred, I think.
Yes.
To come to help get Bruce back. So now we come up to Elliot. I love the fact that Bruce, because a lot of storyline behind Bruce is that how he became the Batman, not how he became Bruce Wayne.
Right.
Right. So it was cool to see that there was somebody from his past, an old friend he went to college with.
Yep.
You assume that he went to college. You never knew he went to college because they never showed that kind of stuff.
Right.
But it was cool that he had somebody from his past that he was actually now rekindling a relationship with, and he actually rekindles relationship with two people in this show. But it also shows you a softer side of shows you a softer side of Batman. Because you assume Bruce Wayne is human, right? But this relationship with this Elliot guy, his best friend from college, even though he's been dismissing him all this time, plays an integral role in what happens later on. Well, actually, throughout the entire movie and throughout the entire comic. Yeah. So it was a welcome to see this Elliot character.
Okay.
And of course, Bruce Wayne doesn't have any low class friends, right? He's got to be a renowned,
absolutely,
neurosurgeon. But it was cool in a way to see.
Yeah, and what I like about it too is as much as you introduce a new character, it's still Bruce being Bruce. Like he ain't hanging out with him. You know, he's not even trying to see him. It's like one of his best friends ever, but he's like, that's true, this guy, dude. I got more important shit to do. But it's so true to the character, right? Yep. That's what I don't mind when a new character is kind of retconned in, because you're right. We've never heard about, Bruce's upbringing outside of the parents being killed part of this. Right. And these two were friends, when you go through the comic. I love the flashback scenes, by the way. Yeah. The way they're drawn and just how, like, the watercolor, they look like you get the vibe that it's a memory. Right. So we got to see that part of Bruce Wayne's life, a part of it we've never really seen before. Mm-hmm. And I give I talk a lot of shit about the whole killing Bruce Wayne's parents and seeing the same comic panels over and over. Mm-hmm. But the way it was done in the Hush comic, I thought was great. Right. Like, they showed it because it is, I get it. It's part of the story. Mm-hmm. And if someone's coming in, like I mentioned, giving this book to someone who knows nothing about Batman, I'd want them to know that his parents were killed when he was 9 years old. Right. But it's also relevant to, in the end, the antagonist, how he went about doing what he did and all the information that he had about Bruce Wayne and Batman. So it's absolutely relevant in the storyline, and they didn't just throw it in so you can see how Batman grew up as messed up as he was. And we didn't have to relive the entire scene. We saw one panel that just had a different art style of a picture that we've seen so often. Right. I like Jim Lee's recreation of those pivotal moments. Right. He did the whole Batgirl being shot. Mm-hmm. He shows that, he draws that. It looks like the same exact photo, but it's just done in a more of a muted style, kind of like, sketch artisty or whatnot. And so I don't mind that. But anyway, so like you mentioned, world-renowned surgeon, he patches, Bruce Wayne up and he's kind of this he reminds me a little bit of like a Doctor Strange when Doctor Strange was a surgeon. Like, he's cocky. Right. He's, he knows he's the shit. He's like, this is no problem. You have to be. You have to be. You can't be at that level and doubt yourself to any degree. And it comes off as cocky, but it's like a superhero, but super confident. Yep. And you have to be. I understand that. Yep. Absolutely. So, so he kind of puts Batman back together, right? And we see that Catwoman delivers this briefcase to. What I love about this too is like all these things are happening at the same time. Mm-hmm. It's really well written. Right. Catwoman's now delivering this briefcase to Poison Ivy. Mm-hmm. And Poison Ivy seems to have Catwoman under some type of control, right? Right. Which we see more in the film. Mm-hmm. She makes her say perfect. She kind of messes with her a little bit. Mm-hmm. And now at this point, I think Batman's kind of recouping, right? Yep. And we kind of get to see this plot. And one of the themes throughout the comic, from a Batman's perspective, was the usual suspects are not acting like the usual suspects, pretty much. Like, correct. Catwoman, this is not her MO. Right. Something's off. Yep, something's off there because, yes, she's a burglar. Yeah, she's lived a life of crime, but her deal is ripping off, like, rich people. Right. Ripping off. Now, and I do like the premise. We kind of skipped past this part. The premise of why this kid was even kidnapped, it was a ransom. Mm-hmm. And this guy, the kid was the son of some like politician or something like that.
Some business person.
Yeah,
or something.
something to do with LexCorp, like down that. But they, the Killer Croc and whoever was at, they wanted like $11 million,
Right.
and his family was willing to pay. And I love Batman's narration. He's like, I'm the only one that didn't support it. So he got there before them and tried to, save the kid before the money got paid or whatnot. Right. So, but anyways, we get to see this. And you're right, it was with Bane, but similar theme in the movie where these villains are not acting like their usual selves. So Batman naturally thinks something else is up. The detective that he is, he thinks something else is going on. What anything on this, dude? Early in the whole Catwoman, Poison Ivy, what you think about that dynamic?
Besides this being like sexy,
Yeah.
I thought the dynamic was cool, but as soon as well, first of all, Catwoman, her big thing is jewelry. That's her primary thing. The fact that she was stealing cash. Was kind of a telltale to me.
Yeah.
And then she gets back, and yeah, she could have had some kind of a agreement with Ivy to some degree. But when she starts messing with her, why don't you say? I love the way you say perfect. Say perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
That's when you know that something's going on. And actually, before that, she tells her to come bring me my money.
Right.
So Selena doesn't take orders like that.
No.
She is kind of like if there was going to be a perfect Batman, female version of a Batman, it wouldn't be Batwoman.
Right.
It would be Selena.
Yeah.
So she's badass in her own right. So that dynamic for me was like, this is cool. So let's see where this goes. And then I don't remember in the comic, but in the movie, she kisses her. So that was a whole different thing. And, you get this flashback to, Harley Quinn and Ivy, the animated show and stuff. So that was different too. But, I mean, I think it was cool, and it kind of set the stage up early on for just basic curiosity. And the thing I like about comics is they do things that catches your attention and make you curious from the very beginning.
Right.
And that's what I like. That was my hook for me.
Yeah.
Why is Ivy pulling this other person's strings? Kind of a deal. And then you see throughout, what's really going on.
Right. Yeah, and actually, I think you're right. I think in the comic, I don't believe they kiss. I believe that, if I remember right, at that point, Selena realizes that she's being mind controlled and gets a little pissed off, right? And then from there, we get to trying to think of I know Batman and Catwoman end up going to Metropolis. I think that's kind of what happens next. Am I missing anything in between that?
In the movie, they end up at a ball, at a dinner.
Yeah.
And
was that before or after Metropolis?
That was before. Because actually, that was
no,
before.
it was after, because Thomas Elliott's killed there.
Wait a minute. So
and he was in Metropolis.
The ball, how Batman, even in the movie, the ball was first because Bruce Wayne didn't even know Selena was back in town.
That's right. In the movie, the ball was first. In the comic, the Opera House is after Metropolis.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
because Thomas Elliott is in Metropolis.
Is in Metropolis. That's where he gets killed. Yep.
Yes. Yep.
So it's two different things, but yeah. So Bruce discovers that Selena is even in town, and then they change. She hadn't been on his radar in like a year and a half, and then now she ends up stealing the money. He's like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Why are you stealing the money? And it ends up becoming this whole other thing, which is how they end up in the Opera House on a date. They actually went on a date.
Yep. And I guess so you mentioned that Bane, in the movie, Bane had a new Venom, right? And in the comic, Killer Croc was, Batman mentioned he's more savage than human. Like, he was mutating.
Right.
And he believes he had some type of new chemical that was causing that to happen. And there, at some point, Batman realizes there's some chemical that ties back to LexCorp, right? And that's why he needs to go to Metropolis.
I think in the movie he found like a leaf or something around Bane, something with that fight with Bane, which led him to thinking about poisoning Ivy, which led him to thinking about there's some kind of accelerated
there was a
chemical that he needed to go to LexCorp for, and blah blah blah. And even in that, so in the comic, he goes and visits Ra's al Ghul's daughter to get information. In
Yeah.
the movie, he wakes up Lex at 3:00 in
That's
the morning.
right. That's right. Yeah.
To get the information
Right in
about the
his
chemical
house.
compound.
Yeah, Lex is all like, I'm a member of the Justice League now.
He's like, well, we'll call you, kind of thing. You know, if we need
Oh, yeah,
you.
yeah. Don't call us. We'll
Don't
call you.
us, we'll call you.
But yeah, actually, Killer Croc escapes. This is now I remember in the comic. He is in jail.
Mm-hmm.
Amanda Waller's there.
Mm-hmm.
And in the movie, it's the same, but it's Bane instead.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
And Batman's like, dude, like he's going to escape. And he busts out and then he follows Killer Croc to an abandoned greenhouse.
Right.
And that's in the comic where he finds the solution. You're right. It's some type of acceleration for the plants, right? How's she grown these plants so fast? And that ties back to LexCorp.
Right.
Catwoman's there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I think they kiss. I think they start getting a little like in each other's face. And she's saying like, aren't you? Because at this point in the Batman continuity, Batman knows that Selina Kyle is Catwoman, but Catwoman doesn't know that Bruce Wayne is Batman.
Correct.
Batman and Catwoman have a little bit of romance going that Bruce and Selina don't share.
Right.
They are aware of each other. They're in the same social circles.
Right.
But it's not the same. So I really like that dynamic too. I think it was slow played. It was, built throughout the whole. It was a sideline plot that made sense and added to the story.
Speaking of sidelines, I like the Nightwing part in this. Not because he really had anything, but his sideline was like the comic part of this.
Yep.
And he was like, you need
it
to
wasn't forced.
Right. He was like, you need to tell Selina. He even though he knows who Catwoman is, he was also, he understands the relationship.
Right.
And I like the part when they were in the car and he was like, Bruce Wayne was like, you're right. So he's telling him about Selene and how he should be with her, but if he does, he's gotta, tell her everything. Yeah. And Bruce was like, and Batman was like, you're right. He was like, really? You're right? He's like, you're right. You shouldn't mention this at all, or something like that.
Well, no. He starts off. He goes, "It's none of my business."
Right,
but,
right.
And then he goes on this whole thing, and he's just like, "You're right. I am." Yeah, it's none of your business.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
So yeah, and go back to the point where she didn't know he was Bruce Shep. They kind of get in this moment. She even alludes to like, "Aren't you at all curious?" Not knowing that he already knows who she is.
Right.
And they didn't unmask there. I think they kiss or whatnot. And she wants to go to Metropolis with Batman. Initially, he says no, and then he gives her the little communicator thing. Right. And basically, they're there to find Ivy.
Right.
Whoever finds Ivy first lets the other one know. Yada yada yada.
A funny thing in the comic was that how we always talk about Gotham is so dark, and wherever Batman goes, he brings the darkness with him. And it's funny, they're like on top of a building or something, and Catwoman says, "Why is this place always so bright?"
Yes,
it's like even at nighttime it's lit up like it means something. That was funny.
I did like the contrast between Gotham and Metropolis. I thought it was done great, man. You're right. Even at night, Metropolis was lit up, and during the day, it was like sun shining everywhere. Like, and I like this is where we get to see some Bruce Wayne. I love the comics where it's a mix of Batman and Bruce Wayne,
right?
Because like he said, Batman showing up to Metropolis is odd, but Bruce Wayne can go there at any point,
right?
And in this part of the comic continuity, Batman owns the Daily Planet newspaper.
No, he teases and says, wouldn't it be something if he said, I thought about buying a newspaper. Imagine if I bought the Daily Planet, and he's talking to Lois. He said, you and Clark works for me.
In the movie.
In the
movie, he mentioned, I own the comic, so I should come up and check it out from time to time. Because he says something to, who's my guy who runs it, Perry?
Yeah.
He says something like, you're running you're running my newspaper into the ground?
I don't
So I think, I know, I do remember them saying that in the movie. But anyways, he shows up there.
So as a side, this is a perfect example of why multitasking doesn't work.
Yeah.
So watch a movie and read the comic. And what was that?
Also, why we're not experts.
Exactly.
So you're trying to multitask, but that's why there's two of us too. So if one of us forgets something, but anyways, he shows up. Bruce is pretty flirtatious with Lois, which I thought was interesting.
Yep.
Because this is obviously Lois knows that Clark is Superman. Mm-hmm. Batman knows the same, and Clark knows the same, but he also knows that what the hell is Superman gonna do, in public in front of everybody. Mm-hmm. And I'm Bruce Wayne. I don't give a shit.
Right. And I think in the comic, Lois also knows that Bruce is Batman.
Yes, she
so
does.
everybody knows who everybody is.
Yep.
So, but they even in the comic, who was it? Clark mentioned that Perry must know who Bruce Wayne is or something like
or
that.
know who Superman was.
Or who Superman was.
No,
somebody
Bruce said it about Perry and Superman.
Yes.
He said something about along the lines of he's such a good detective or an investigator.
Right.
How does he not know that Clark is Superman? Or maybe he does and just doesn't.
Yeah. He also alluded to like maybe Gordon even knows who he is. Right?
Yep.
Because they're both very good detectives.
Yes.
So that was pretty cool.
Yep. And he even
those are those sidelines that you don't get in the movie.
Right.
Which makes the comic so much more detailed and so much more engaging.
Absolutely. And so Batman's there at the Daily Planet, and he's using Lois's computer. He's talking to Oracle, and I think that's where they find out that, LexCorp is where they need to and then he goes to see Talia next, I believe, right? In the comic.
In the comic, he goes to see Talia, which he has had a relationship with.
Yep.
Who's Ra's al Ghul's daughter.
Yep.
But in the movie, he goes to see Lex.
Goes to see Lex for the same purpose, to find out where this or he wanted Talia to let him know whatever the substance was, who big purchasers of this, right? Because he's trying to track down where it's coming from. And I think it was along the same lines in the movie with Lex. Anyway, what ends up happening in the comic is Catwoman runs. Actually, Batman's with Talia, and his little pager goes off, and it's Catwoman. And Talia picks up on it. So, and you talk about attention to detail, story, and characters. Like, that's one of his ex-lovers.
Right.
Catwoman is now some chick he's,
right.
dating, trying to get whatever. And he's been around, and Talia noticed. And what I love, too, about this is an ongoing theme in this story where, at least in the comic, where people are alluding to the fact that Bruce and Batman, they're different right now. And you mentioned Nightwing bringing it up. And the whole idea is, well, Batman's different right now because Catwoman's in his life, and it's a good thing.
Right.
Now, Talia picks up on she don't like it, the difference. To her, it ain't a good thing.
Right.
And then when his pager goes off, she instantly knows, oh, that's like the other chick, pretty much. Which I thought was cool, like to bring into the comic world. Like, I mean, that's how people act.
Exactly.
Women are very perceptive. So he runs off, meets with Catwoman, even though she joked about not letting him know when she found Poison Ivy because she wanted to kill her, but she calls him anyways. And then we get a Batman Superman fight. I bet you weren't expecting that the first time you read this and watched this.
Well, I expected. Well, I didn't, but it's always inevitable.
Yeah.
Batman and Superman. It even got to the point where, like, after all of this, Superman had the nuts to try to pull some Batman shit, right? He was like, next time next time you're gonna visit Metropolis, call me first or something like that. It doesn't work. It doesn't work that way.
No.
And it's crazy that Superman tries to pull this with Batman, but Batman has a standing statement. You don't operate in my town without my permission.
Yep.
You don't have to. It's not. Don't call me. It's not call me first. It's like you don't have permission to operate in Gotham without letting me know first.
In the beginning of the comic, and when he's like, "This is my city," and they're like, "This is how we don't approve you doing it that way." He's like, "I don't care. This is my city." To the feds, you don't give a shit. So we see a cool little fight with Batman and Superman. And we see these flashbacks of him and Tommy playing this game. It looks like a game similar to chess almost, right? Strategic war type game, and I love how these flashbacks tie into the current story that's happening. Where in the flashback, Tommy's telling Bruce you got to think like your enemy. Right. And then that's essentially what he used to defeat Superman. Superman's being mind controlled, and Batman, dude, if he knows his enemies, he knows his friends even more. Like keep everyone close to you. Batman knows fucking everything about everyone. Right. So he's worked with Superman, so he knows what he's gonna do. He really predicts his every move. He tricks him a little bit. He tells him you open the gas line, so don't turn on your heat vision. And then he has a kryptonite ring in his utility belt, so eventually he ends up really just, tagging Superman with this ring, like whooping his ass with it.
In the movie, they're brass knuckles.
That's right.
They're brass knuckles, and with the kryptonite are spikes.
Yep.
So each hand has like 4 kryptonite shards at the end. So
I think I like that better than the ring.
it's more impactful. It makes
Yeah.
more sense because if Batman is hitting, he has the kryptonite around Superman, but if he's hitting Superman with the hand that doesn't have the kryptonite on it, how effective is that going to be versus some knucks where
Right.
every blow is as impactful or hurts more than the last one. And Superman does say, I'm gonna kill you now because that hurt.
Yeah. And there's even you talking about the narration bubbles. There's even one where Batman says, "I hit him, once. If I hit him again, I'm going to shatter my hand or something like that."
Right.
Like no one that's it. What's cool. Sometimes, at least, you get lost in the fact that Superman looks like a human being, but he's called the Man of Steel for a reason, dude.
Right.
You punch, it's like punching Wolverine.
Right.
He's that strong, that hard. Like he's break your fucking hand trying to punch Superman.
Well, it's a little different. Wolverine is because ultimately you're going to go through soft flesh to hit steel.
Right.
Superman is all just one massive like piece of whatever.
Yeah.
But even with that, because Batman has tried to hit Superman before, and Superman sees it's coming, and he'll kind of turn his face so that his fist glances off of him, and he still almost breaks his hands.
Yep.
Right. So even when he's in the comic and in the movie, it doesn't explain it in the movie, but in the comic, the narration, Batman's narration, or Superman's narration is that Batman's narration. I'm fumbling here, but Batman's narration is that he can see that Clark is still behind the scenes, right? Not quite driving, but he has some influence on the driver,
Right.
And so he knows that he's pulling his punches, like his Arctic breath. He knows that he's not going all out. He's not going all out with the hitting. He's not going all out with all this other kind of stuff. So he knows Clark's back there, which is, to your point, he knows his friend
Yeah.
and his enemy at the moment,
Right.
and he's going to use all that stuff against him.
And you talk so much about the added detail in the comics, right? Like a lot of these little nuances that you don't get. Even Batman knowing that, like you mentioned, he's in the car, but he ain't driving. Because Batman's also been under Poison Ivy's control. So he says, he's like, I know what it's like. You can see, what you're doing. You just can't control it.
Right.
So he's like, I know he's in there. And and I like how really from the beginning of this, he talks about the contrast between him and Superman. When he's saving the boy, he's like, I'm not Clark. If Clark would have done this, it would have been a much different way. He's like, the boy's probably scared right now. He's scared of me because I'm the darkness. And he's like, if Clark was here, he'd say something cute. Like, the differences between the two of them. And he talks about that a lot in this fight. He's like, Clark has good in him. I don't.
Right.
So that's why he wasn't concerned going against a mind control Superman. He's like, he should be more concerned about going against a mind control Batman because he has some goodness in him that I don't have.
Right.
Batman's more scarred than Superman. But eventually they get Superman to break because they use Lois Lane as a tool. Right? I mean, literally throw her off the damn roof.
Right. That was comedy.
Yeah.
Right there, because obviously neither one of them expected that, and Catwoman just went out, on a tangent.
Yep.
And just, but she had valid reason because Superman was about to deal with Batman finally.
Absolutely. So that causes him to break. And actually, it kind of reminds me of, in the Justice League movie, we talk so much shit about all the time, but they do something similar to get him to break. Because when he comes back from the dead, he's, evil, Black Superman.
Right.
And they do something similar with Lois.
One thing I do like about this, speaking of breaks, they both broke in this comic and in and the movie. Batman almost killing Joker.
Yep.
Because he thought he did something that he actually didn't do for once, right?
For the first time.
And then Superman almost killing, Batman.
Yep.
Because he's under this mind control. So, that was interesting. I mean, they both went to almost the edge against each other.
Yeah, absolutely. So they end up capturing Poison Ivy, right? And then we get to actually the part where you're talking about now, a good segue. They're back in Gotham. Bruce Wayne, Selena Kyle, Leslie Tompkins, who I like as a character. She's not we don't see her in a lot of things, but she's this doctor. And you ever seen the show Gotham?
No.
She plays a pretty big role in Gotham. Funny thing is the actress who plays, I forget, something Baccarin, plays Deadpool's girlfriend.
Right.
in
His
those
wife.
movies. His wife
Right.
also plays Leslie Tompkins in Gotham.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. But she's more of an older lady in this, who, is someone who knew Bruce since he was young. Stepped in and helped him out when his parents died a little. But anyways, they're at the opera show, which, dude, I love the artwork for this scene too.
Yeah.
Like how elegant he makes everybody look. You talk about like how he draws Selena, insane. And I like when they're going through the metal detector and she's like got her lingerie out and he's like, you want to see the whole catalog? Like they're messing with her, because she's true to character. Like
Right.
she's not. That's really not her inner circle, but she plays the part. I mean, Selena's like poor. I mean, you go back to year one, she was living in the slums, dude.
Right.
So the premise of this opera, I really like that. And, the show gets off the rails pretty quick. Batman alludes to the fact that, like, hey, that's an odd song to be singing. And then we know it's Harley Quinn dressed up in this costume.
That's another split between the movie and the comic. In the comic, the opera singer is
It's Joker?
no, Harley Quinn.
Yep.
In the movie, Harley Quinn, or is it backwards?
In the comic, it's Harley Quinn.
In the comic, is Harley Quinn. In the movie, Harley Quinn hits the singer over the head with the thing,
That's
and then
right.
it starts.
Yes. Yep.
So that's another little difference.
And I like that it was like the old school Harley Quinn with the Jester outfit.
Yeah.
I know they changed it a lot, but that's still my favorite.
Yeah,
That's like the OG Harley Quinn. And then there's a pretty cool fight scene that happens here.
Mm-hmm.
You get to see, like you were talking about with the silhouettes, you kind of get to see the same thing with Harley a little bit. What if she kicked Thomas Elliott or something? She did something, she kicked the phone out of his hand. That's what it was. Thomas Elliott goes to call the police, kicks the fucking phone out of his hand. That was pretty cool. So they're going at it, and this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where Bruce knows that Selena's Catwoman, but Catwoman doesn't know that Bruce is Batman.
Right.
And Leslie says something interesting to Catwoman. So I wonder if she knows. She goes, I know you have something else to put on. Like, why don't you go do what you need to do? Like, I know you like. So she must know, right? And then they costume change. I love that in comics and superheroes. They got the costume with you. I can't fight you without my costume. Right. Obviously not.
It's not as quick as Superman going into a phone booth and changing, but it happens pretty quick.
Yeah, it happens. So Catwoman's fighting Harley Quinn. We see a cool little fight there. Batman shows up. In this big scuffle. And the funny thing is the crowd thinks it's part of the show because it's an opera.
Of course.
Of course, it's going to end in tragedy, blah, blah. And then, we get to the scene that you talked about where, and this is how this comic, this issue ends. I also love that. I don't remember in the dark or in the graphic novel, do they give you a clean break and let you know when each chapter's over, or is it just continuous?
There's pretty much a clean, because they start out with this like the portfolio image.
Okay.
At the beginning of each one of them.
Got
so
it.
there's breaks.
So you do get and I think I wish I read this real time because they left some of these issues on some cool cliffhangers.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the one we're talking about now, Batman makes his way out of the opera into the alley, of course, right?
Right.
He sees Joker there laughing with a gun that says bang,
Right.
and Thomas Elliott on the ground bloody and dead.
Right.
And that's how that issue. Can you imagine back then reading all this as like a younger kid and like, shit, we got to wait a month to find out what the hell happens.
Right. I mean, to me, that was almost as impactful as Jason Todd getting murdered.
Yeah.
So that was pretty surreal.
Oh,
at
yeah.
that point.
And it sends Batman over the edge.
Right.
I mean, he is. And I love how, Joker, you keep seeing in the panels, he keeps saying, stop. Mm-hmm. And then once that's in, he goes, stop me if you heard this already. He's still he's getting his ass whipped and still telling a joke. Like, and I think that's, one of the overarching themes of reasons why I love this story is there's so many characters involved.
Right.
But I feel like they're all handled pretty well. They're all true to who they are.
I think you're right. They've done an excellent job of giving everybody the platform. There's a lot of people, and they give everybody the platform at the appropriate time. Then they take it away and they give it to somebody else. I think they did considering the amount of characters that's involved in this series. They did an excellent job of portraying everybody, giving them their time. giving them their status, not changing them, not trying to make Batman funny,
Right.
or make this into a musical,
Right.
right? They gave everybody their thing and just moved it along.
You mean you don't want him to do the Michael Keaton's? You want to get nuts? We can get nuts. You don't want to do that?
No, I
we're
don't want
good?
to see that at all.
And so Thomas Elliott's killed, right?
Yep.
Batman's beating the shit out of Joker.
Yep.
And he's not commissioner anymore. We learn at this point Jim Gordon's he's retired, former police commissioner. He shows up and he shoots a couple shots at Batman.
Oh yeah.
You know, kind of one that grazes was it like his shoulder maybe, and knocked off one of his bat ears. Like,
yep.
And what's crazy, and this is where you talk about the character psyche, morality, all these different things come full circle because, I love, again, I've said this 100 times, the narration as Batman's beating the shit out of Joker. He's talking about, the things that Joker did. Like you think he's going to break his rule here. He's talking about him paralyzing Barbara Gordon. Talks about how Batgirl loved the job more than Robin did, and she was such a natural, and how it was literally like taken from her.
Right.
Talks about Jason Todd and how he was, and I love just Batman now understands. It's like he's looking back and he understands his rights and wrongs.
Right.
Like he talks about how he should have never had Jason Todd become Robin.
Right.
He was not ready. He put him in a bad spot. He owned that, but also the Joker was tied to that. And then now the Thomas Elliott thing. Like and also we learn in this narration that Jim Gordon's wife was also killed by Joker. I don't remember what comic that was in, but that also happened. Right. So he's justifying why he should kill him. And then, Jim Gordon's even saying, he's using those same points as why he shouldn't. He's like, you didn't break when all these things happened. Right. You didn't let me go down that road. I'm not going to let you. Which I thought was a really cool, as much as I know your feelings on the no-kill rule. But actually, Joker had blanks. He did not shoot Thomas Elliott. Right. So the one time he didn't do something, Batman's ready. Like, he's just that straw that broke the camel's back.
Right, right. We talked earlier about Chris Evans and him being as equally responsible for the success of the MCU and things like that. I think one of the underrated characters in DC is Jim Gordon.
Yeah,
I don't believe that there would have been a Batman, or at least the version that we have now, unless there was a Jim Gordon, because Jim Gordon gave him free reign. Well, I won't say free reign, especially initially. He gave him reign regardless to operate in Gotham without having the police force on his ass every single day.
Yep.
Because Batman was a menace. Nobody knew who he was and what his roles were. So I think Batman, his existence is owed a lot to not just his mentality, his genius, his money, the Alfred, the blah 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 blah. I think a lot has to do with Jim Gordon and the fact that, like Lois Lane, being in trouble, snapped Superman out of his Ivy's grasp on him. Jim Gordon talked Batman out of his rage from killing the Joker, and that says a lot about that Jim Gordon character.
Yeah.
So I think he's as equally as important
as
an
Adrian,
Alfred.
Is there another character that could have talked Batman out of doing that?
I don't think so. I don't think it would have been Barbara. I don't think it would have been, because he's used to Alfred's voice since the beginning. I don't think Dick would have did it.
Yeah.
Barbara, none. I don't know. I think it had to be Jim Gordon, because the other important thing about that was he wasn't commissioner at that point. Like you said, he was retired. Why was he even there?
Yeah.
Why was he even in the alley?
Just to stop Batman from doing something that he knew he would have regretted.
So, the level of importance over Jim Gordon, I think, is underrated in all of this stuff.
Yeah. There's also a part in this, Catwoman gets shot, right?
Yep.
And then her and Batman are fighting at the end for some reason. I forget why. Is it because he didn't kill Joker, but
not Joker.
I don't know. I remember why they were fighting, but if you remember, Batman hits her in the bullet wound, and he said, "I'll take advantage," like basically to knock her out. I forget exactly why they were fighting at the end of that, but after
that's it. We'll get to it, but it's kind of like the same thing that why they were fighting in the movie.
Yeah,
but we'll segue into that.
Nightwing show, you mentioned Nightwing earlier. He shows up after this, and they have the funeral for Thomas Elliott and all this stuff. And I think that the big thing I want to talk about there is when he's in the Batcave and he's kind of got the AI up and he's doing all like the detective work, and like when he's talking to him, he's pretty much ignoring him. Right. And this is where he starts talking to him about the whole Catwoman aspect, right? Like it's a good thing. And then him and Dick go out on like a run. I thought this was cool too, like. Nightwing's in the car with Batman on some like nostalgic Batman and Robin type shit, which was cool. You know, they get the call, they go out together, and this is where Ra's al Ghul gets involved. And Batman, you know, there's a armed car robbery by the Riddler, and the first time we see the Riddler in this. And dude, this is the, you know, I don't want to spoil the end yet, but when in the movie, when Batman is going off on the Riddler for being like a lower tier character, like I thought that, because you had said this before,
right?
So I thought that was cool. It was almost a little meta, you know,
right?
Because Riddler is kind of a lower tier character.
Hold on, I want to step back just a second because I think it's important. So we talked about the Batman family and everybody's being involved. So Damian was in this, right? Not costumed out, nothing, but as a antagonist son, right? So
in
Bruce,
the movie,
yeah. So Bruce is going out on a date with. This is
after
the Nightwing talk in the Batcave and stuff. So Bruce is going out on a date with Selina, and Damian calls him up, and basically calls her a whore.
Yeah.
I don't know why. You know, you going out with her. Bruce is like, well, she's not like that anymore. Yeah. He said, there's no such thing as ex-criminals. They're just criminals that aren't operating right now. Yeah. And so he goes on and on and on. You need to wear, use protection and Bruce. So I thought that was just classic Damian Dick move. Yep. Right. Even the dog is agreeing with him. Right. So I think that was important in this, but it also shows how Bruce is changing, which also affects Batman.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna have, maybe this is a hot take, Adrian. Damian Wayne is the best Robin.
Oh, I agree with that.
Yeah,
definitely. Because Dick, I think up until Damian, Dick was the best one.
Yep.
But I think Dick was someone that needed to be there to help evolve Bruce into the Batman that he is, along with. So Dick and Gordon were two factors in the development of the Batman that we have today, and but Damian is definitely the best Robin.
Oh yeah.
Out of all of them, because Damian is like, if Bruce was to retire when Damian got older, he would take over, and it would just be. I don't even know what to say about criminals if Damian became the Batman.
Oh, my God. I'd love to see a run where he's Batman.
It'd just be over.
And I rewatched a lot of these Batman DCU, the animated movies, and that's what made me enjoy this character of Damian so much more. Like, Batman talks about actually this is a point, Batman is keeps his emotions to himself, right? He doesn't tell the Bat family how he really feels and cares about them. They believe he doesn't give a shit about them.
Right.
But that's not true. And we even learned, like, what's crazy, think about the narration. Like, remember when he talks about Dick being pretty straightforward with him, and he says, like, he's earned it. He talks to me. He doesn't pull any punches with Batman. He says whatever's on his mind, and he said he's earned that, and it's a level of respect that he has for him that he doesn't share with them.
Right.
And it's almost like the readers know, but those other characters don't.
Right.
I just thought that was a cool little, point that we saw here. But, to get back to the armored car, I like how they just smash it, and Nightwing discovers that Ra's al Ghul's involved a little bit. Batman kidnaps his daughter in a way to try to pull him out, right? They have
all of that is excluded from the movie, by the way.
Right,
there's a Joker scene. There's a Riddler bank robbery scene, but there's no Ra's al Ghul or his Talia's involvement at all.
Right. But he finds some ash that he knows is from like a Lazarus pit.
Right.
And that's why he's like, it's got to be Ra's, because he has these pits all over, right?
Right.
So someone's used one recently,
right,
is what he knows. And he kidnaps Talia to pull Ra's in. They have this fight. Batman stabs him with the sword, knowing that he's going to need to get to a pit, right? And then what happens here? Lady Shiva shows up, right? Because Talia's kidnapped. Catwoman's watching her.
Yep. Also not included in the movie.
Nope, that's not in the movie. Lady Shiva shows up and fucks everybody up.
Right.
She's a beast too, dude.
Oh, yeah.
But then Talia outsmarts her. Talia is a savage, dude.
Yeah.
And then she's beat up pretty bad, and I think that issue ends with Batman finding Catwoman all beat up.
Yeah.
And then even now, this is where I think the comic it gets there's a little too much going on.
Mm-hmm.
Some reason the Huntress is back, Scarecrow's there.
Right.
Like it's a lot of shit just kind of thrown in. So this is why I gave it, the 8.3 instead of the 9 or 10.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the important part of this section of the story is when we see Tim Drake, the newest Robin, probably the worst Robin.
Right.
It's just like, why? You know what I mean? We're talking about Dick was great.
Right.
Jason Todd was an asshole, and then they killed him off and became Red Hood, and then that, made a much better character. Tim Drake is just there.
Right. He was just a filler for Damian to show up.
Yep.
I mean, that's all that was.
Yep. But he is captured by this former Robin. We see Jason Todd.
Mm-hmm.
We see Jason Todd. And because this leads somehow Ra's al Ghul leads Batman to the cemetery, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he ends up fighting this Jason Todd character. He doesn't believe that it's Jason Todd at first, right? But now he's saying some stuff to Batman that, really, I guess only Jason Todd would know.
Right.
Then after a little bit, and this is where, now having the Under the Red Hood story, because at this point, last time we saw Jason Todd was A Death in the Family,
mm-hmm.
which ironically we reviewed last week. Jason, first time we've seen him since then. But after they start fighting, it becomes pretty apparent that Clayface is mimicking Jason.
Right.
What you think about this reveal? Did you think it was really Jason Todd at first?
I thought initially that because it was like right off of Scarecrow, it was some kind of Scarecrow
Like
gas
toxin,
thing, and making him think that he was fighting the Jason, his demons and all this other kind. So that's what I thought it was initially. So, but you're right. There was a lot going on at that point.
Yeah.
Again, none of that was in the movie,
Right.
so it made it easier. The movie was more digestible. It wasn't as complicated, even though it was still a good movie. The details and all these characters, Talia, Lady Shiva, Ra's al Ghul, none of those people, that whole scene, the whole Jason Todd fight thing,
Mm-hmm.
none of that was in the movie. So it was a lot cleaner, still entertaining though.
Yeah, absolutely. So that fight happens, realizes it's Clayface, so he's an imposter, right? Batman gets back to the Batcave. There's a sword, like a League of Assassins or League of Shadows sword, in his computer.
But hold on. So stepping back a little bit. So in the movie, the Riddler is captured, and
Yes.
Batman and Gordon is interviewing him.
Yep.
And Batman figures out that it's Clayface.
It's Clayface, yep.
So he takes the Batarang and basically it looks like he cut his throat.
Yeah. Yep.
But he actually pulled out this micro transmitter voice thing.
Yep.
That the Riddler was actually controlling or mimicking himself through Clayface, who had made
That's
himself
right.
look like.
Yep.
Then there was this whole Clayface breaking out of jail thing.
Yeah. And then, the computer deal, he ends up realizing that there was some hacking done on his computer, pretty much.
Right.
And it goes back to in this part, I'm not crazy about the whole Harold, the mechanic who couldn't talk, and Batman let this guy into his back like that. I think that was a little forced in there. That to the point of it being convoluted. Now, is it all right? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't impact that much of the story. It just gives a reason why everyone, knew Batman's moves, or not everyone, but Hush knew Batman's moves because he pretty much had something implanted in the damn Bat computer picking everything up.
Right.
It also is the reason why I like this part, reason why Batman requested Thomas Elliot, because there were these flashes of Thomas Elliot that his subconscious mind would pick up on, but you wouldn't see. They were just really quick and subtle,
Right.
In his computer, right? So when he did pass, or when he did get all screwed up, he called for Thomas Elliot.
That speaks to how extreme Batman is, and I say Batman because we all know that Bruce is the Mask, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that talks about how extreme Batman is.
Yep.
Because this dude is pretty much on death's door.
Yeah.
And he's using Morse code on
Yes.
the bed, tapping with his
Yep.
fingers to communicate. I
Yep.
mean, you're talking about contingency plans. So I can't talk. I can't blink. I can't move. So I'm going to come up with Morse code to be able to communicate because I want you to know that I'm in here some kind of way.
Right.
That's badass right there.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
badass, dude.
And then Batman tracks down Harold. So as much as I'm saying this is probably not, but it is a very important part of the story. He tracks him down, and first time he's seen him in a long time. Harold admits or reveals to Batman he can now speak because he couldn't speak before, right? So he had some doctor help him out, and that also was a theme throughout this. Thomas Elliot was helping some people along the way, right? There
Two-Face.
was Two-Face. He helped
He
Two-Face.
reconstructed his face.
Yep. And now this dude Harold, and Batman's talking to Harold and trying to get some information out of him, and he's explaining what he did, and all of a sudden he's shot,
Right.
killed, right? And then we realize that Hush is the one who shot him, and we also realize that it's Thomas Elliot at this point.
Right.
He has, I think, the necklace that his mom gave him, the little green, Cheerio looking thing. And Batman realizes that it's Thomas Elliot, and he's had a grudge against Batman's family. So we didn't touch on this yet, but in these flashbacks, we learned that not only did Bruce's parents die when he was little, Thomas Elliot's parents passed too. At first, though, they got into a car accident, and Bruce's dad was the surgeon. He saved Thomas's mother, but couldn't save the dad. And you would think that, okay, Thomas Elliot, that maybe he was upset because his mom wasn't saved, but it actually was the inverse. He was upset that Thomas Wayne saved his father because he was getting this massive inheritance, and he actually was jealous of Bruce.
Right.
He was jealous of the fact he even says, you were an orphan and you got to enjoy all that wealth yourself. I had to wait until my mom passed away from cancer, taking care of her, and just to take over the family fortune. I had to do that, pretend to be a good son. You had it handed to you, which, hey, talking about cancer stories, they didn't add no humor in this Taika Waititi. But what did you think about that reveal? The reason why, and I thought it all made sense. I liked it. And I'm talking the comic because the movie was a little different. How did you feel about the comic reveal?
Well, none of that was in there in the movie,
Right?
But it goes back to Gravik. I mean, it's like something happens, whether it's your fault or not, right? And in his case, it's not Bruce's fault that he got his money when he was a kid, and Bruce was too damaged anyway to even understand what the money meant and what was going on, and so on and so forth. But this guy is holding a grudge against Bruce because he had money and he didn't. So as an adult, because now I have means, I've shaped my entire life so I can destroy you and everything around you. It's like Gravik. Okay, so yeah, Fury, you didn't get me a planet for my entire race, right?
Yep.
So let me just wipe yours out and take over your planet. It's like, what kind of sadistic? I mean, you just got to be off the charts.
Yeah.
Kind of insane. I mean, Joker is like level 1 insane according to compared to these guys.
Right.
These guys are just completely off the. Who holds that much anger in them to just derail and plot and plan? Just go out and put a bullet in his head, make it easier on yourself. But no, you got to set up all of this stuff. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah. One part we didn't mention prior to this, Batman did reveal himself to Catwoman.
Yes.
So they know who they are, right? And they kind of went on this run where they were working together for a little bit. I like how it's shown in the movie where it has these flash kind of forward scenes, this montage of them just whooping everybody's ass, different criminals.
Right. Harley Quinn they showed up together, and he's like, Cat. She was like, Cat and Bat. Yuck. I just threw up. She said, I just threw up in my mouth. So that was cool. But yeah.
So so they already know who they are. But this last scene, we see Harvey Dent pretty much save Batman.
Right.
Which I really like because, I go back to, and as you go through the Long Halloween, you'll see why I love this so much. The Jeff Loeb wrote that as well, and a lot of that story is based upon Batman, Harvey Dent, and Jim Gordon's early years working together, right? And then he eventually becomes Two-Face in that story. But I feel like it came full circle because they lost Harvey Dent in that original story, became Two-Face the villain, and Hush essentially helped Harvey Dent come back to being himself, and in the long run, he ended up saving Batman. So I thought that was a really cool. I love when these ongoing stories kind of pan out or call back to something years ago.
But that makes Harvey Dent rather shallow, though, right? So basically, when he got his face scarred, right, and he became Two-Face because he was mad because he wasn't pretty anymore, right? So now Elliot fixes his face. Now he's pretty again, or at least not Two-Face. Now he's good again.
I guess
that makes him shallow to me.
I guess so. But it's in The Dark Knight Returns, we see something like this happen as well, where Two-Face has a surgery, but in that one, something happens to him.
It didn't take, or
no, some shit happens to him later on, and I think he has like a little mental break where now he doesn't see it, and then he thinks he has the two faces again or some shit like that. So interesting. But in this one anyway, he's on the up and up. Do they fix his face? He's good. But he saves Batman. The only problem here is Batman never really unmasked Hush. So as much as he knows he's Thomas Elliot, I mean, Batman he's big on logic, physical evidence, right? So he never really got to see it. And that's pretty much, that's where the Hush part ends. And then we end up learning that in the comic anyway, the true mastermind behind it was the Riddler.
Right.
And what's funny is the Riddler, Batman even said this during the comic, was the only villain that didn't act differently. He did what he would normally do.
Right.
Riddles, robbery, so that was the only one, and he was actually the mastermind behind it. So, and what we learned is that the Riddler had some type of terminal brain cancer. He used the Lazarus pit, and while he was down there, because it also makes you smarter, it makes you more perceptive, right?
Right.
And
more strength.
Yep, all kinds of shit.
Right.
And while he was in the pit, he learned that Bruce was Batman.
Right. Well, his mind, out of all the calculations, because it was almost like his mind was blocking him from realizing with all the input because it's not magic. It's not going to make you magically realize, but all the input that he's ever had in his mind, it all ultimately made sense that Bruce Wayne was, the Batman.
Right. And then he reveals that he knows his identity, which we see a little, I think, homage to this in the Batman movie with Riddler, because Riddler in the Batman movie is not like Riddler in most comics.
Right.
He plays almost similar to what this Hush character, it seems like it's heavily influenced by this. And you remember the scene where Riddler's captured, they're in he's in Arkham or whatever, he's on the other side of the glass, and he starts saying Bruce Wayne, and it almost seems like he knows that Batman's Bruce. But then we learn that he just says that because that was the only person on his list that they didn't kill. But I thought that was a cool little homage to this.
Yeah. So in the movie, so Elliot was not Hush in the movie, even though you would think that he was. That's who I initially thought it was.
Oh, so you initially thought that even though you never read the comic?
Right.
Okay.
Because of the interaction, he suddenly, because I never heard it's Elliot guy, right? Yep. And then when he walked out of the hospital, when he fixed Bruce, Bruce, he was like, I'm gonna be your friend. I'm your best friend. I'm being your friend forever. Blah 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 blah. So he walks out and he gives this with his back to Bruce, who's in bed. He gives this little, out of his eye look over like he's doing something mischievous, and then Bruce in the bed does kind of the same thing. Like I suspect something of you. So I thought he was Hush from the very beginning.
Got it.
And it turns out that Riddler was Hush. And it's also interesting that in the movie, when Batman, so the whole ending of the movie is that they're in this factory, and the Riddler, he's buff, he's mad with power and information and so on and so forth. So he actually narrates, because he kidnaps Catwoman.
Yeah.
And he's getting ready to kill her. and he narrates that, you know, Batman is going to do this on the computer. He's going to dwindle it down to these addresses. He's going to come here. Matter of fact, he should be here in a few minutes. And Batman shows up. And what does the Riddler do? He uses Elliot to slow Batman down. His body.
Oh, his body's there.
He stole his body
Yep.
and dropped him from the ceiling right in front of Batman's path. And that's just insane, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, his eyes all glazed over. Obviously, he was dead. So
Yep.
in the movie, you know, Elliot definitely was not, you know, Hush. So, and then they go on, you know, to the end. He and Catwoman starts battling. Catwoman gets free of the binds and stuff, and Batman's, you know, kind of like going toe to toe with the Riddler in his little enhanced form.
Yeah.
And then they kind of get at it, and then Riddler gets knocked over this ledge and starts to go down into this fire pit, and Batman, you know, with the grappling
saves
hook,
him,
saves him,
Yep.
and he's trying to pull her up. And the building is exploding around him, and Catwoman's like, you know, what, dude? What are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing? And so it gets to the point she's like, screw this, and she cuts the line.
Yep.
Riddler drops, and she and Batman, like, you know, runs out of the building.
Yep. Just in the nick
And
of time.
the fight at the end with Catwoman is, dude, you're insane.
Right.
You know, you're just as crazy as the people that, you know, you're trying to put away. You know, he's like, I got to try. She's like, your code is going to get you killed. You do understand that, right? And so that's what the fight at the end was, at least in the movie.
Yeah.
Because she's like, you're never going to change. We're trying to build something. And this dude literally tried to kill us. He killed your best friend.
Yep.
He did all of this stuff. And you're still trying to save his life.
Yeah, because at this point, they're pretty much in a relationship, right?
Right.
You
Oh,
know?
yeah.
And yeah, right. In the movie or in the comic, it's a lot different. In the comic, Riddler, he kind of pokes the bear, dude. He's talking shit to Batman about Jason Todd. Right. He said the Riddler, you know, what's Batman's biggest failure? It's like not saving, you know, Jason Todd. Right. And then in this, Riddler reveals that he knows that he's Bruce. And there was one part of it that was a mystery because Jason Todd's body was not in the grave. And Batman starts asking him about it, and Riddler won't tell him. Even taunts him about it. And then the other piece of this, you know, the Riddler, when he mentions Batman being Bruce, he mentioned that, you know, that's one of the biggest riddles, right? Who is Batman? And then Batman kind of uses like reverse psychology on Riddler. He's like, yeah, but you love riddles. A riddle that everybody knows is not a riddle. Right. So he kind of like, go ahead, dude, tell everyone, and then you're not going to have this power on me. And like he knows what makes his villains tick, right? So Batman's not worried at all. He ain't fucking telling anyone because he likes the fact that he knows no one else does. That's how the Riddler operates, right? And then when Batman knocks him out because he refuses to tell him where Jason's body is. So this is the tease for, you know, I'm sure at some point in this show we'll talk about Under the Red Hood. There's the movie and the comic there. But this is the tease for that because we eventually see Jason Todd resurrected. He looks very similar to this Jason Todd we saw here, you know, the clay face version. And fun fact for you, Adrian, fun fact. In Under the Red Hood, when Jason Todd in the comic and Batman are fighting in the alley, they mention the graveyard scene in Hush. And Jason says that at first, in the beginning of that fight, it was me. And then I switched out with Clayface. So, and I don't think that was planned at the time, but maybe this was just, you know, for artistic reasons. But I think the art supports it because in the beginning of the fight, it's raining, right?
Right.
And how does Batman eventually realize that Jason Todd is Clayface? Because he starts melting. In the beginning of the fight, he was not melting. Right. And they're fighting, and he's hitting him. So maybe it was, I mean, you know, going back, they retconned it, but it makes sense. It holds up.
Yeah, but why would he do that? Why would he start fighting him? I know because he thinks that he let him die and all this other kind of stuff, but why would he, you know, show up on the scene for no particular reason at all and then jet and let Clayface finish the fight?
Well, because someone dug up his body and put him in a Lazarus pit. So I would assume, and this is I'm making up my own Batman story here, but I would assume that or Riddler, since he was actually the one behind this, Riddler digs up Jason Todd's body, throws him in the Lazarus pit, wakes him back up, and now you owe me. and now this is what you're gonna do.
Right.
And
Okay.
you know, so
Okay, that makes sense.
yeah. So if y'all need any help, dude, tying any stories together, just come talk to your boy. I got you. So anyway, he refuses to tell him where Jason's body is, knocks out the Riddler. So that's a little dangling piece of fruit that will serve up late, because it actually was, I think, 2 years later they resurrected him as under the Red Hood.
Oh, yeah.
So this story came 2 years prior to Jason Todd being resurrected, and in the final panel scene.
So the Riddler didn't just go in himself; he also used it to resurrect Jason Todd.
Yes.
So that's why one of in the comic, Batman was like, "So he said, you don't have to worry about me.
Right.
You got Ra's al Ghul and the entire League of Assassins looking at it, because Raj wants to know who used his pit."
Yep. Yeah. So he pretty much, checkmate on
Right.
Riddler, right? Riddler thought he could outsmart Batman. He had him going for a while.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good plot, but
Right.
Batman always figures it out at the end. And then the end scene, Batman, Catwoman, they're talking. They're kind of getting close, a little intimate, and then she tells him to hush right before they're about to kiss, and he fucking loses it.
Right.
Which is so Batman.
Right.
Which is so, we talk about the character being flawed, and it's like, well, and this is just like so true to the character. All story long, they're building to this Batman Catwoman relationship, right? It looks like it's good. Batman's in better mood. He dealt with the death of his friend even, easier than any other death, because he has Catwoman in his life. And she says one thing wrong. He don't trust her. But they also were talking about the fact that, did they fall for each other because of this spell she was under?
Right.
And Catwoman is of the thinking that even if that's what started it, I don't care.
Right.
But because Batman's a detective, to his core, he still wants to know the reason why.
I don't think about or care about what crazy shit brought me and my wife together. I'm just
Right.
glad that we are. So, in that case, it was almost like Batman was just looking for a reason to cut the relationship
Yeah.
off, because that's his comfort zone.
Yep.
He liked the idea. He was flowing through it. But at some point, he's like, no, this is not me. So we need to kill this. So, even if he would have said, when she said hush, he could have just said, maybe too soon.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Right.
And then just kept on moving. But no,
Yeah.
he wanted to end that anyway.
But he started thinking, I think it made him think like, oh shit, was she involved too?
Right.
And he don't trust anyone. And one I think the last thing I'll say about their dynamic is I love how she calls him out and says things that like the readers are probably thinking, because Batman says he's a loner, that he has a whole Bat family though.
Right.
And she says that like you're a guy who sticks to himself and is no strings attached, but these are plenty of strings.
Right.
And she was like, just wanted to be like part of that. She wanted to be another one. And obviously it didn't pan out, but he does now. I think he said this in his narration, but he said that, someday possibly.
Right.
And then the story pretty much ends.
Right.
Anything else on that last scene into the story?
I liked, it just got muddy in the comic.
Yeah.
But I liked the way they ended it in the movie. The movie was much more exciting. It wasn't just, Riddler got knocked out and all this other kind of stuff. He actually, you didn't know if he died or not, but he did fall into this pit and the building exploded. So it was much more of a dynamic, much more cinematic ending. And I love the fight at the end. Not only the reason why, but not like, because Catwoman said some stupid word, hush.
Yeah.
It was because this dude just tried to wipe us all out, tried to kill Nightwing, tried to kill everybody around you, and, wiped out your best friend, and you still trying to save him. You're broken.
Right.
And so she's like, maybe, so she started with the, maybe someday. And then he says, someday.
Yeah.
So
we'll quick fire a couple things, right? Because we've talked about both the comic and the movie.
Yep.
Now, which one's better overall?
I like the comic better overall. The artwork was incredible.
Yep.
The storylines. I like the Batman narration. I like the insights. I like the flashbacks. It was so much more detail.
Yeah.
I even liked the Killer Croc version versus the Bane thing.
I did too. Yeah.
So there was a lot of much more material. It did get kind of muddy when Raj showed up.
Yeah.
Talia, Lady Shiva. That comic got kind of congested a little bit, and then after that, it kind of went downhill for me after that, because the ending was not as exciting as the movie.
Yeah.
But overall, I liked the comic better than the movie. It's just certain things in the movie I liked, particularly the ending scene.
Gotcha. So comic or villain reveal. Better in the comic, better in the movie. Was it better to have Thomas Elliott the villain or Riddler as Hush?
I like the fact that it was Riddler, because Riddler was one of those Nightwing says, he's one of them one of those sea level kind of villains. And it was good to have somebody actually come up that's formidable. Because at the end of the day, the Joker, even, he's a listed villain on Batman's radar because of his intensity, his intent, things like that. But Batman can wipe him out just as easily as he can the Riddler.
Yep.
But he just doesn't for whatever reason. So it was nice to see one of these underclassmen per se come up and actually do something that was impactful.
Got it.
To Batman.
And then last question. Oh, I think you already answered this. The ending itself you liked better in the movie.
Correct.
Yeah. I would say so. Same questions. Batman comic versus the movie. Comic definitely over the movie. Villain reveal. I like Thomas Elliott, the villain, better than having Riddler. Or I shouldn't say the villain. I like Thomas Elliott being Hush over Riddler being Hush. Kind of the same reasons why you like the Riddler being Hush is I could say the same thing about why I like him being the mastermind behind this. I like that, to your point, he's not really been an upper echelon villain ever. Outside of like the Batman movie with Robert Pattinson, which is fairly new, right? So I like him being in the background, and almost because of who he is, that lower tier was almost forgotten about.
Right.
And he actually was the mastermind. But I love the Thomas Elliott French, to villain reveal. I thought that was great. And the ending, I go back and forth. I do like I like the fight in the movie. I like the Catwoman dispute about the whole killing, or not killing. I like that, but I think for this story, I like the comic ending better. I like him questioning Catwoman and not because then it becomes more about Batman, than Catwoman. Like Catwoman ends it in Hush, the movie.
True.
Batman ends it in the comic, so I'm going there. But movie, I thought, man, if I gave this an 8. What I say, 8.2, 8.3. I'd give the movie probably a 7.5, 7.8, something like that.
Okay.
So anyway, great comic story. We mentioned last week that Death in the Family we said was a top 10.
Right.
To me, dude, Hush is top 5, maybe even top 3 for me, Batman comics. What about you?
I'll agree. I like the cinematic ending of the movie, but I like what Batman said about Ra's al Ghul and that the whole League of Assassins. So it's not over for you,
right?
Joker.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that not Joker, Riddler.
Yep.
Also love the fact that Riddler was pulling the string. It reminded me of that movie where Ice Cube's son. He was in a movie with this guy with what's the guy that played 300?
Gerald something.
Yeah,
I forget his
Anyway, him, Butler.
Yep,
Gerald Butler. So you thought that Gerald Butler was the man. He was the head of the crime, and he was pulling all the strings and blah, 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 blah. Come to find out, the Ice Cube character was actually the one giving the orders in the background.
Got it.
And then everybody on Gerald Butler's team got killed, and the Ice Cube character, his son, Ice Cube's son's character, moves on to do another robbery, like in England or something like that. So I like that deep dynamic.
Yeah.
You got somebody in the background pulling the strings of the person calling the shots, kind of a thing. And I love the fact that Batman's like, yeah, I'm not only going to tell you you suck, but I'm also going to tell you that I'm not even the one that you got to worry about.
Yeah.
You got all of this other thing that you probably didn't even think about. You got all these other people coming after you, and they're so much worse than I am. So I do like that. I would give it the whole premise of Hush, Batman Hush, the movie and the comic. I would give it a 9.
Okay.
I like the comic up until the very end. I agree with you on the movie, 7 point something.
Yeah.
Because it didn't have the detail. I would have liked it to be longer and include that detail. But I would give the comic separately 8.5, 8.7, and the movie like a 7.5. But the whole premise, the impactfulness of it, the beauty of the artwork, the fact that it's timeless. I didn't know it was over 20 years old.
I know.
I would give it a 9. The whole thing.
I agree. I mean, that artwork holds up. You look at it today, and it's like I wish there was some modern day Batman stuff. I wish Jim Lee did more Batman. Right. I really do. The way. And then Jeff Loeb, like I wish he got another, try at writing some Batman. I think he understands Batman better than most Batman writers.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We should ask ChatGPT to write Batman comics with those two people in it.
Yeah,
see what it does.
Absolutely. We'll put it out here on Only Comics. Right. Well, I think that's about it, dude. I'd like to be like, they're giving me the go home, but we don't have anyone else here but you and me, so no one's giving us the go home. But I think that's it. That's our wrap on Hush. It's one, again, my all-time favorite Batman comics. Right. Please let us know what you think. Do you agree? Do you not? Do you think both of us said the comics better than the movie? I think a lot of people feel that way. We have different feelings on the end, and the end of the movie was very divisive. Right. Now, yours is interesting because you saw the movie first. Yeah. So that was kind of your baseline. Mm-hmm. And now seeing it almost, even though the comic came out first, it probably feels like, oh, they changed this, Right. Because that's what you're used to. Mm-hmm. I've read the comic, probably 5 times before I saw the movie. So to me, it was like, oh, shit, they're changing this, that. But I thought it was handled well. I mean, we've said this before, DC Animation, they know what they're doing. Right. And they adapted this Hush story into the main content. It wasn't like a standalone Hush film. Mm-hmm. It was part of their overarching story. So there was stuff they had to change. Mm-hmm. Damian already existed in that universe. Mm-hmm. So they can just cut him out. They had to put him in there. Right. So I thought they did a really good job. I thought it was handled well, knowing that they had to tie it into an overarching story. Right. Last question, I'd say, let me make my statement. I would love to see Hush adapted. I know we talked about the Batman almost being inspired a little bit, but I'd love to see this story adapted in live action somewhere. Yeah. This is a great Batman story for a live action movie. Right.
I agree. Christian Bale playing this version of Batman. But you brought up something about, the differences between the movie. It was like the movie made sense on its own. Yeah. The comic made sense on its own. Right. And the fact that I'm watching them both, I didn't compare. It wasn't like apples and oranges. It was the same thing with slight differences. Yeah. None of it was upset. It wasn't an upsetting difference. It was just a different difference. Right. So, and that speaks to the writing and the art, how it draws you into that Batman world. Yep. That is so much so good. The storyline, the characters, the drawing, the writing, that you don't even notice like what could be some bad stuff about it. So great comic, overall, movie or comic. Would suggest you see it, read it, but definitely read it.
Yes, absolutely. Well, there you have it. Another episode, in the can, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. What call it that. Another episode down. We appreciate you guys joining us. If you like this deep dive, check out the deep dive we did into Death in the Family last week. I think you'll like that equally as much. And then the week of Halloween, we will be doing a special episode that will be all the long Halloween. Right. There's a couple movies, and there's a story. You've seen the movies already. Yes. You've not read the comic yet. I have not. Nope. I've read the comic a bunch of times. I've seen the movies probably twice. I'm going to rewatch both of them. I typically around this time of year reread The Long Halloween almost every year. Oh, wow. I love this story.
So The Long Halloween to you is like Groundhog Day for me.
Sure. There you go. Yep. Or Iron Man 3, whatever, whatever. Yeah. That's the last thing. Is Iron Man 3 a Christmas movie? Yes or no? Let us know. Right. I say yes. Adrian says no. But you guys be the tiebreaker.